Welcome to the Anchor Your Retirement podcast. I am your host, Barbara Gullen, in Kansas City, with ever the hopes of having a pro team do something worthwhile. Mourning the loss that the Royals are out of the playoff picture. And Tony, I guess I shouldn't say that too loudly because the Twins have been out of the picture for a while.
A long time. We
And ladies
knew
and
that at the
gentlemen,
beginning of the year, I think, that
my
we probably
co-host
wouldn't be.
Tony Shore, ladies and gentlemen, forgot to
Yep.
introduce you.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
I'm here in Minneapolis, and our teams aren't so hot either. So, but at least Kansas City has some championship teams, and the Chiefs have been a championship team. You got a great quarterback, so
And we get Xavier Worthy back this week against the Ravens.
yeah, I think you're gonna have a good. I think you'll win that game. So
I am optimistic that we will. Very
yeah,
optimistic that we will.
yeah, they'll make adjustments. They'll start winning games. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're without our two primary wide receivers.
That makes it
Um,
tough.
and Mahomes did some boneheaded stuff the last couple games.
Yeah, he
So,
didn't look great. He wasn't. Him
mhm.
and Kelsey were a little off, and really Kelsey's all he's got right now for receivers. So that he's kind of got that target lined up, and
Yeah, well, he found another one this last week, number 80.
yeah.
So, anyway, enough about sports.
Enough about sports. We're talking about. You said, Barb, you want to talk about the gender gap and retirement. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that women live longer than men on average.
They
And
do.
unfortunately, they usually have less saved for retirement than men do. So, realistically, I'm sitting here looking at a study from the Institute for Women's Research, and women age 65 plus, because of this retirement gap, are at greater risk for falling below the poverty line than men are when
Wow.
they're over 65. A lot of it has to do with the labor market. A lot of it has to do with the fact that, men don't usually take time off to raise the families like women do. They don't
Yep.
have that gap in earning. And then, there is still a gender gap in terms of compensation. The number is getting smaller, but it is still there. And unfortunately, even a small gap spread out over time becomes a much wider chasm almost as we get to those retirement ages.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. And if you can see it, if you walk into any assisted living home,
Mhm.
facility or long-term care facility, and you look around, at least the ones I've been in with my relatives, my
Mhm.
grandparents, my mother-in-law, my mom and dad, the majority of people in there are women. I mean,
Yes.
it's like, I don't know what the ratio is. I'm gonna guess, like, in my parents' home, when I walk in there, it's, I don't know, probably 10 to 1 women to men. It's
Interesting.
astronomical.
You
um
don't think about it being that big of a gap, but, as we're sitting here talking about this, I don't know if you lived in a town big enough to do this. We used to go visit nursing homes and sing
yeah.
Christmas carols and stuff.
Yeah, we did too. Yeah. My
And
my youth group and church choir and things like that. Yeah.
yes, or you'd have the adopted grandparent thing. Um, and they were mostly women,
Yep.
not men.
Yep. And
So
that's just the way it is. And the problem is the men leave them with a lower income.
they
But
leave
the
a
expenses
lower
don't
income
change, right?
and the expenses don't change. And unfortunately, they leave them with fewer assets because typically, unless the first one to pass away has a car accident or some kind of cardiac event or something that was totally unexpected, if it's a prolonged illness, the first person in a couple to get sick is usually going to end up using the majority of the assets.
That is true. And so it's the man that usually needs the care first and the long-term care, and that's going
Mhm.
to really eat down your assets, isn't it?
And the sad part is that the caregiver, in this case, the one that is the caregiver before we move to a facility, usually ends up getting sicker for longer because they weren't taking care of themselves while they were taking care of their partner.
Ah, yes, that's true. So the gender gap starts even in the working years because typically, it's not always, but typically, the woman or the wife would stay home and raise the
Mhm.
kids or take more time off at least from their careers to have a family or to have kids in the first place and then to take care of them. And then what that does is their earning years are decreased. You pointed that out. I think I just want to
Right.
reiterate that because I think that's one of the big starting points, and
Mhm.
the pay gap, because women especially, it's gotten a little better, but I mean in the past it was really bad. The what men made versus what women made, even in the same jobs. So you're really starting off at a disadvantage if you're a woman in society for preparing for retirement. And then there's the living longer. And the good news is we're all living longer. The bad news is we're all
We're all
living
living
longer.
longer.
And you need more money the longer you live. And women, the stat is six. Women typically outlive men by 6 years is the average.
Yes.
I mean,
And the
that's
interesting thing to
crazy.
remember is that when Social Security was set up, they figured that somebody would be receiving a payment from Social Security for 5 years or less, if even that long, with what the life expectancies were back then. Now we have people that start drawing their Social Security benefit at 62 that are living well into their 90s and drawing that Social Security benefit the whole time. Part of why we have Social Security funding issues is because the original business model with Social Security doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It doesn't, right?
Mm. And in fact, I met with a couple this week where the wife had lived abroad for 20 years. And
Oh,
even
wow.
though she was a US citizen, she was living in Central America and was not paying into the Social Security system. So,
Wow.
yeah,
That's really tough.
yeah.
I mean,
And now we never tell you you should rely on Social Security as your sole source of income in retirement. It was never intended to be that. It was always meant to be something to augment or supplement your retirement, never meant to replace it outright.
yeah. Yeah,
But
that's true. Initially, it wasn't. In fact, what's funny is the life expectancy when Social Security was enacted back in 1935, right
mhm,
around there, the male life expectancy, Social Security didn't kick in until I believe 65 was the full
I think
retirement
it
age.
was
It
65,
was
yes.
65 was the full retirement age where you could receive your full benefit, or, and the average life expectancy for men was 62 or 63. So most men weren't living long enough to even collect Social Security.
Right.
So that shows the difference. It's become a real safety net for better or
Mhm,
worse, and
mhm,
people rely on it. So and the fact that there is a gap when it comes to
mhm.
Social Security for women versus men is not good, and it's
It
too
isn't.
bad there
And
isn't some legislation that can be done, but there's financial planning that can be done to offset it, right?
there is. It's up to women to take the financial reins, really, and to do what they can to protect their own retirement, whether we're planning for longevity, um, contingently planning for an unexpected illness or a prolonged illness. That is where income planning becomes crucial, and working with a fiduciary and an advisor who understands how to create that income for you, or to help come alongside you and give you realistic ideas of what you can and can't expect, is so very important. And sadly, many women are afraid to approach financial advisors.
Yeah, they are.
They are afraid that they're going to come across as being dumb. They're afraid that they're going to be talked at, not to. I have a client who recently got married and who has always managed her own finances. And her new husband wants her to go to his financial advisor. And she looked at me point blank and said, I don't want to run the risk of that advisor telling my husband my business and what I have going on. Even though, it's a later in life marriage, they have decided to keep their finances separate. And there is this overarching concern of the good old boys club and a breach of confidentiality.
Hmm.
It's If there is one thing that I could impart to the interwebs here, it is to empower women to get informed, get educated, and to work with an advisor to help them navigate some of this crazy terminology and all of the different potentials, the things that we can consider for a supplement to your Social Security, for creating retirement income that we don't have to worry about you outliving, for creating those contingency plans when you get sick.
Yeah.
Even though we know the gap exists, you can do things proactively to tighten that margin and close the gap a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great, and you do want to try to close that gap. And I know, Barb, you've been helping women in the community do this for a long time now, and
I
that's
have
been a
been.
passion of yours and a focus. And so, I just encourage our listeners to give you a call, set up a consultation, and to close that gender gap, because it
It's
is going
crazy
to.
to think that I got my first set of licenses like 20 years ago.
Wow, 20 years ago. So you
Mhm.
must have got them when you were 15? How is that
Roughly,
even possible?
roughly.
How is that even possible? You don't look a day over 35. So Barb, this is the bottom line when it comes, because if you don't start planning now, when you get to retirement, or if you're already in retirement, you need to get a plan in place or get a second opinion on where you're at, because it can really derail your retirement, especially for women, this gender gap. And you're going to need to make sure you've got a plan in place to deal with it for your retirement,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, realistically, your biggest enemy is your ignorance and your lack of information. If you Once you can assess things for where they are, then we can move forward and make a plan.
Yeah.
But hiding with your head in the sand figuratively and assuming that it's all going to be taken care of when you have the potential now to proactively help yourself
Yep.
and stave off some of those issues or address them head on. And do you like eating cooked peas?
Uh, Not much,
Neither
but
do
yes,
neither
I
do I.
will.
Neither but
I will eat them because I was told that's what we do.
Right. But my point is that if you have a dinner plate with all of these amazing foods on it and cooked peas,
Nope.
you're gonna dread the rest of the meal knowing that you have to eat the peas. So
If you have
why
to
not
eat the peas
right, but why not eat the peas first and get it over with?
and then
Digging in
enjoy the
and
good
and
stuff.
then we're cruising from there. So
That's a good point.
financially, let's look at the hard stuff and eat the peas, deal with it,
Deal with the mushy
and
peas first, get them out of the
right,
way, right?
right, and then we
Yeah.
can move on to the apple
Yeah,
crisp.
I love
So
that. Ooh, apple crisp.
'tis the
Yes.
season,
A
'tis the season.
warm apple
Yes,
crisp a la mode
yes,
with a little vanilla ice cream melting on top.
and some good homemade caramel sauce. So,
Oh, yeah, that's good too.
yes. Anyway, it's funny. My gym says we get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And you kind of have to do that with your finances if you haven't taken a look at things in a while. If you
Sure.
haven't addressed them, it's, asking the hard questions will get you to where you need to go, because then you have the information and can move forward with creating a plan from an informed perspective rather than a wild guess.
Well, yeah, yeah. You don't want to end the DIY doing it yourself or guessing. That's never good. I
Mhm.
really think it's important to work with a professional like yourself to make sure you're on the right track. So, Barb, before we go today, I want to make sure that we let our listeners know. I think it's great that you and your team there are great, and you offer a no charge, no obligation consultation. Correct?
We do. We do. You can go to our website, bgwealthmanagement.com, and go to the contact information, fill it out, let us know that you want to meet, and we will help you. You know, we'll figure out where you need to start if you don't know where to start. We can help you create that income plan. We can help you decide what it's going to look like. If one of you passes away, we can help look at tax consequences, not only for you, but for your kids with your qualified retirement accounts that you haven't paid taxes on yet. There are just so many different things that need to be addressed as we're planning for retirement, that really working with a professional gives you an advantage that most do-it-yourselfers don't have.
Yeah. It gives you a huge advantage. And Barb, I think that's really good. And again, if our listeners want to call to set that up, it's 913-553-6222. Again, that's 913-553-6222. Or
Yep,
they can just go to bgwealthmanagement.com, right?
they can. We're there.
That's
So,
awesome.
it's however it's easiest for people to reach out to us is how we want to do it.
All right. Well, Barb, I think that's great. Just making people aware that, hey, there is a gender gap, but there are things you can do about it to combat that and plan for it. Right?
Yep, that's what we're here for.
Awesome. Barb, great show today and a great topic. Get people thinking about it. I know our listeners might have more questions. So, again, listeners, I want to really encourage you because this is important. Call 913-553-6222 and set up a consultation there.
Yes, and if I'm not available, we have two other agents who are also qualified fiduciaries that can help you guys start putting together a plan and closing the gap.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Barb. And listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in to Anchor Your Retirement with our host, Barb Gullen.
We'll see you soon.